to On the Air with Lock and Load Publishing. We are here to have a great time and discuss everything from games, designs, production, to simply what's on our minds. We let you know what has us excited in the gaming industry and what's next for Lock and Load Publishing. Grab your helmets. This show starts right now.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, how you guys doing?
We are getting an echo. I'm not sure where. We're still getting an echo, guys?
Everything's off on my end. And we are streaming to Facebook and YouTube.
Okay. Sean is having little PC problems right now, so he may be a little late. I don't know what Dan is. And I have not heard from Shayne.
Well, that's no good.
MIA.
Where is Dan? We were just talking to him. Did he leave? It was those mushrooms he had for dinner and the steak.
It's whose mushrooms? You know they were special mushrooms.
Yeah, if Dan comes on mentioning that he's tasting colors, we might have a little bit of an issue with that. But Dan is good enough to do. He picks his own mushrooms. He knows what to look out for.
Hey, Devin, your picture is really pixelated tonight, just so you know.
Yeah, having some connection issues. What is going on with that? Let's cut that out.
You guys hearing that?
All right.
I hear it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, Nate's going to jump in too. Dan is trying to get back in. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the basic information, guys. First of all, thank you for joining us today. And I hope you had a great week. And I'm going to start with the news about the World at War 85, Space Infantry Resurgence, Atlantic Storm, the ammo crates, the solar system for Nations at War and World at War, plus a lot of other items that are on these ships. First of all, okay.
Are they on the containers? Are they on the container ship?
Yeah, they're actually on the container ship. I don't have a name yet. I'm still waiting for the stupid name. Once I get the name, guys, I will post a link, and you'll be able to see exactly where the ship is along its travel to the east, to the, I guess, the west coast of America. Okay.
I hope it's not going to the East Coast.
Well,
It's going to be a long way.
That would be bad if it goes to the East Coast.
No. It depends with the trains and all that. You never know. It has to hit the middle of us anyway, of the United States. Just everyone knows. Just everyone knows. Before we go any further, if you're watching this on a different, on a group or something else, please remember we cannot see your posts. Okay, we can only see your post if it is on a Lock and Load or on YouTube. Okay, on our Lock and Load pages on Facebook or YouTube. So don't think we're not answering you if we don't see it. Okay, Dan is still not back. I see Shayne has jumped in and Sean. So I'm going to drop those guys in there. Hold on. Hey, Shayne, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
All right. And Sean, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Better than you were doing.
Well, if I turn my camera around, this is the current situation.
Wow. What happened?
I have no idea. They just decided to update with.
We are having some definite buffer issues tonight.
I'm on cell because my Wi-Fi won't connect. As soon as these computers finish what they're doing, I'm gonna try to get back on with the PC instead of my phone.
All right. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to give them the rest of the update. Again, I still don't see Dan, so I don't know what's going on there. Those mushrooms may have been too powerful. All right. Hey, for everyone, let me introduce you to Kurt. Kurt runs a YouTube channel called ID Gesture. Did I pronounce that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Hey,
And
Kurt.
Hey, Kurt.
How you doing?
He's being our guest host. We're going to talk to him a little bit about his site. Oh, there's Dan finally. Okay.
The mad Quebecan.
I know, really. All right. So anyway, again, the news is that the for those who didn't hear it, that we are got the cargo. All the games are on the cargo ships. There's multiple cargo containers going to America. There is at least a cargo container or two heading towards the EU. Second Chance Games and us are officially linked up. They're going to be not only handling the Kickstarter for us, but they're going to be handling additional games for us going forward. So they'll bring down the shipping and the delay for a lot of our product over in Europe now. Okay. Of course, this will cause us other problems trying to balance out who gets what, where, and why, inventory wise. Okay. And so one more time. Those mushrooms are really working well for you, Dan. Okay, and so we have that all handled. Play testing for Lock and Load Tactical. Okay, well, we filled out everything almost immediately. We're probably going to open up 10 more beta testers, and we're going to put that on the forum, so pay attention to that because it could be very quickly. People have been asking about other items. The other items such as starter kits and other starter kits for World at War, Nations War. The answer to all those questions are yes. All the counters, we professionally printed the counters, they're not laser cut counters anymore, are on this cargo. This cargo ship is probably well over 4 to 5 containers, okay, between here and the UK. That's not counting the truckloads of stuff going down from the printer in China down to VFI. They'll be handling all of our Far East and Asia shipments and distribution. And there's another cargo, smaller one, but going to Australia and New Zealand. And we'll keep you up to date on all those as they move along. Okay. Well, we have a designer of Point Blank and many other great things, Sean. And we got Shayne, designer and graphic genius here. And I guess what we'll do is we'll let Shayne introduce himself first and talk a little bit about his stuff.
Okay. I'm Shayne Logan. I designed the old school tactical system and did all the artwork for that. That's how I got involved in the board war game industry. And since then, I've started taking on work from other companies, David with Lock and Load and Sean, and then also Compass and other Flying Pig games. So.
But Mark, most importantly, where are you from?
But he's not Mark. That's why I'm answering you.
I mean, Shayne.
Actually, I'm in Southern Ontario. So another Canadian for you, Dan.
Apparently, Dan, Shayne's not having the mushrooms. Okay, we have a tragedy here. What T-shirt are you in tonight, Dan?
Straight ahead.
I wore this Token Yacht Club. Token Golf Yacht Club. All right, we'll have to talk after the show. Okay, let's see what we have here. Shayne, what is Old School Tactical?
It's a tactical level war game, system game, like, of course, Lock and Load Tactical, and there's a few systems out there, well, a lot of systems, and It's just a system that I developed. I think a lot of designers, they design the games that they want to play. And I had what I had in mind was, I don't know, just a game that's very interactive with the players, and it's not real rules heavy, but that a lot of the details are under the hood, so to speak. So,
Are you an ASL fan?
an ASL fan? No.
Okay.
I like Squad Leader. One of the things I like about ASL and Squad Leader and all those is that they have so many different scenarios, so many different forces, and that's what I like about it. But I don't like the heavy rules.
I understand.
All right. As many of you know, today is a big day. Today's the Marine's birthday. And I don't want to get beat up by Maurice, who's not here, and or Nate. But we're all going to take a second to remember them, guys.
That piece sounds like it was written by Green Day.
That's even better.
No, it's not.
Oh, I love Green Day. Okay. Let's see. Well, what we'll do. Okay, Kurt's here. I guess we'll just start with the point blank, and we'll go on from there. I know there's questions back here, guys. Why don't we start with Kurt? Kurt, what do you got for Sean or Shayne?
Yeah. What? How you doing, Shayne? Nice to meet you. Appreciate it. So, why don't you give us an overview how Point Blank is played?
All right, love to. So, Point Blank is a tactical card game. It's designed to play at the squad level, so that's the component size. Individual tanks, weapons teams, and squads of guys and half squads and individual leaders support weapons as well. The game is controlled by an action deck that's common between both players. They'll draw cards from there, and they'll issue orders to their troops. There are a couple other mechanics that safeguard against some of the typical things that card games, typically have in their mix, like getting cards screwed and that sort of thing. It's an interesting way to move units through a grid system that we have developed, and I think we've developed a pretty interesting movement system for moving units around the battlefield.
Is there a solo mode, Sean?
There's a framework for a solo mode. The issue is size of the tabletop. It's you think of card games as a smaller, meeting at a bar, playing a quick card game. It's a little bigger than that because it's tactical. So there's not a lot of abstractness in it. So I'm developing a way how you can play it sort of sideways, sort of like a game called 1066 Tears to Many Mothers. I don't know if any of you seen that or familiar with that. It's the Battle of Hastings. It's a card game. It's really good. But their solo system is designed that way, and I think I can model Point Blank off that. And, so been playing around with that, but the core focus is on the rules as they are as a two-player, and the scenarios, and tuning out any of the little minor bugs.
And this is a two-player game. Can it be? Is it also like Mike Bertuccelli's tank game? Can you play 8 people?
It is not designed for multiplayer beyond 2.
Okay.
Can you play
There may be a
cooperatively?
way to do that, but pardon me.
Can you play 2-player cooperative?
There's no reason why you can't. It would be the equivalent of playing, say, a squad level game or old school tactical game. These folks care about these squads, and these folks care about those squads, and maybe jointly together you choose an action, and that person plays it on their troops. It's an impulse system, so it's an I go, you go gameplay, where one side will play an action, or some cards have multiple actions on them, or trigger their leaders or things like that to do stuff. And then once their actions are done, then it flips over to another person. They play an action, and there's back and forth. The turn's over when the deck of action cards runs out, similar to a game called Up Front, which was that I was inspired from to design this game.
Yeah, when you mention squad level, tactical card driven, us OGs right here, our minds immediately go to Up Front. And obviously, you just said that you took Drew. Now my mind has gone completely blank. Influence from the game. How does it differ from the game? How does it compare to the game? And if you know Up Front, how easy are you going to be able to slide into this system?
Well, I would say it's not a replacement for Up Front. The main differences are Up Front had individual soldiers that made up their squads, and Point Blank, each card is a squad in itself. So that's one of the big differences. The other differences is that in Up Front you had terrain mixed in with your action deck, and you drew the terrain out of the action deck, and it was mixed in with your hand, and you could play it on your troops that were moving, or you could play it on your opponent if it was like a marsh or something like that. Point Blank has a terrain deck, but it's separate, and the terrain deck is when you do a move action and you're moving into a sector, which is what we call one of the areas on the battlefield. And when you move into a sector that has no terrain, you're drawing terrain off the top of the terrain deck, unless you've kind of planned in advance and conducted a couple recon actions and drawn some favorable terrain. Therefore, you could possibly play terrain that you've scouted already in lieu of drawing blindly off the top of the terrain deck. So those are some of the differences.
In the when you bring out the game, what nationalities are involved?
So currently it's German and U.S. And I've got a couple French resistance cards designed for some French resistance scenarios that we're looking to plug in. And in the Kickstarter, there may be a couple additional nationalities. So
you focused on West Front, right?
Yes, West Front. In particular, the France area, mostly a little after D-Day and sometime through September. So, all of the Cobra and Goodwin type scenarios can be played with these particular troops. There is a talk of adding Canadians as a stretch goal as well. So
we have a gang card. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Anyway, I'm trying to futz with one of my computers here to try to get a better signal here.
But when you're playing with that game, if you want me to give you a second, I can do the 30 seconds with no enemies here if you like.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I'm trying to boot up Chrome right now and possibly switch over.
Okay.
All right.
This week on No Enemies Here, we have an intermezzo by Matt White. He's an artist. He does stuff like this. Also, we have the Christmas game giveaway. This week is Herman Lutman personally signs for the winner a game of Crowbar delivered to your house. Also, we have the continuation of Grognard of the Year and the regular news, new games, pre-orders, what's happening in the vlogging review world, and, you know, lots of stuff.
There you go, Dan. See the green screen behind you now.
Yeah, it was very, very disconcerting to see Dan's head floating around on his last episode of No Enemies Here. I mean, he had some great backgrounds. I love the space background, but you know, he's got Dan's head just moving around.
It's a work in progress, man.
Hey, it's looking good so far. So.
Thanks.
All right, do you see me in my other computer there, Dave? I'm gonna leave here.
I have to kill. We have a full house, so I have to kill your feed now unless you jump back in.
All
right. Okay.
Oh, you killed Dan too.
Oh.
I'm thinking David's got something out for Dan. I don't know. That's just too many coincidences. Welcome back, Dan.
It's the mushrooms. It's not me.
It's the mushrooms. Are you tasting colors yet, Dan? That's what
I'm no, but you look very pretty.
I always look pretty. What are you talking about?
Okay. You know what? Since we're waiting for Sean to fix his computer, I do.
How did you get involved with the old school tactical, Shayne?
Basically, years ago, I started off doing work in the with computer war games, and some people were asking me about doing print maps for some of these games, and I thought, well, why not come up with my own game? So, because I've always loved tactical level games, just not as far as getting into ASL. So I set about developing my system. It took a couple of years. I did all the artwork, and I enjoy playing it still. So it's been a lot of fun.
It is a fun game. I met Shayne about 3-4 years ago, and we got to play test it at a WBC. And I do like Squad Leader. It's not my lifestyle game, but I enjoy playing. I do also enjoy Lock and Load Tactical. I mean, I enjoy all squad level tactical games. Old school tactical, it's got such beautiful map work, and the components are cool, and it's a fairly simple chart system to kind of tally up what the fire factors are. It's got a card component in it as well. So I actually cajoled Shayne to try to use more cards in the game, but nope, just it is as it is.
Well, I think one of the fun parts about the system that I really like is the impulse system with the randomness of it, and like sometimes depending on the turn, kind of represents like the ebb and flow of a tactical level battle. Like some turns you're going to have more you can use, and some turns you're really pressed. So it made it dynamic for me anyway, as far as the battles went.
I'm going to not take you guys off, but just remove you from the stream so I can load up some imagery here for you, Shayne. So I'm going to, guys, hold on. Not what I wanted.
Wow, I thought that was the best. Oh.
I thought I was having a hard time with the green screen.
This properly. No, it's not going to let me talk and show the counters. I don't know why it's doing that, guys. So I'm just going to let the counters go up in the Old School Tactical Pacific, so hold on. Okay, everyone should be back. Okay, I guess.
Do you have any cards to put up?
You know, wait, why don't you start the map? I think the map is the most unique thing about it.
Well, there's a rule book.
So why don't you explain that?
So the map actually is going to be a grid, like a set of tiles, instead of a full-on map because of the size. So we've set up play on a grid like this, where there's essentially two player sides. There's a U.S. and a German player, and then that middle area is sort of like a neutral zone, no man's land. Scenarios are there are probably about 15, 16 scenarios in the game, and using this grid, there will be various areas that are set up with terrain. Not all areas will have terrain. They'll be unknown. And you'll find out what that terrain is as you progress through toward your objectives, or you conduct recon actions. But some scenarios will not be using all 5 of the columns there. We call them areas, and each box is called a sector. So some scenarios may consist of just 3 areas, some 4, some 5, so you won't be using them all. So when you're playing a smaller game using the tiles, it won't take up as much real estate on your table. But it'll be set up generally like this. This was a fairly recent change, and one of the reasons was that these maps were about 4 to 5 feet in length. And about, 1.5 to 2 feet in width, so it would fit on a 4x6 table. But if you cut these things up into tiles and set them up as tiles, then you can fit on a smaller table. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to make it versatile for small spaces and larger spaces.
All right. Here's one of the German cards, I believe.
Yeah, so this is a leader card. So this is all the leader cards are mini size. So they're not. So there's 2 types. There's poker size and the mini size. The mini size are, I don't know what the dimensions are, Dave. They're like.
Aren't they all standard size now? Oh, no, those are mini cards.
No, the support weapons and the leaders are mini.
Okay.
So we're looking at a German lieutenant here. Nationality obviously is on the upper left-hand corner. The blue number is the morale, and the green number is their modifier. And down below is their special ability. So during a impulse, you can conduct typically 1 action with a stack of troops. However, you could activate the leader by spending him, by rotating him 90 degrees, and you can conduct a rally, or that helmet is called a ready action. There's a concept in the game where troops, as they conduct actions, acquire fatigue. So if a infantry unit is moving, they'll acquire a fatigue counter. If you acquire enough of these, your unit spends. So you rotate 90 degrees. That ready action does a couple different things. One is it allows a spent unit to become ready again. And that's a concept of, they're tired or they ran out of ammo or, something, or they have to put, bring some wounded back or whatever. And then you can also reduce fatigue on another unit. So that's what the ready and the rally do. And in this leader, you can do this in addition to an action that you play on your turn.
And Shayne, that's Shayne's artwork. Is that right?
That is Shayne's artwork. Yes.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Shayne, what was the technique, for lack of a better word, that you used on this artwork?
Most of the pictures are historical photographs, which I painted, and then I did some filter work and some other effects on it, and then a few techniques to get it onto the card, and it's a little involved, but I think it turned out pretty good.
Turned out excellent.
Thank you.
All right, to turn out more than good, yeah, I think this is really nice artwork.
Absolutely.
Here's the U.S. leader, or our U.S. leader.
Yeah, so Sergeant Smith here, very similar to the lieutenant. He's has a high morale of 6. He's got a modifier of 1, but his special ability is he does have a rally ability, or you can use him to redo a die roll. So if you're conducting an attack, let's say, and you have a die roll that's not favorable, then you could spend him and then redo one of those die rolls. So infantry only in this particular case because he's an infantry leader. So in the game, the action cards also have pips on them, and that's what's used to determine your dice rolls. So if you were going to conduct a D6 roll, you'd flip the top card, and that would be the result. If you'd want to use an actual dice, you can, but the only thing is that for every die you roll, you have to flip that many cards because that's the timer of the deck. So once you get through, and the action deck's about 108 cards, and it goes pretty quick when you're resolving a combat because there's, the initial rolls, there's the defender's roll, then there's any morale check. So you could go through 6 to 8 cards in a combat action. So 108 cards, it doesn't take too long to empty out a deck. And then when a melee happens, all hell breaks loose, and that's when the game starts to really grind down the action deck. So there's a lot of, not to dwell too much in the game, but because of these mechanics, there's a lot of decisions to make. And that's the one thing I really wanted to have in a game like this is a lot of decisions. I just didn't want you to push troops up and then just sit there and do a D6 attrition all day long. There's so many things to consider. And there's a lot of little nuances about the units in general. So, and this artwork it's pretty much final. There's a DYO component, so those numbers will be going on these cards, and there's a card ID that we're going to include as well, so you can kind of track your cards.
And Sean, complexity is?
That's a good question. The mechanics are not hard. Well, I can compare it to this. Has anybody ever played Breakthrough Normandy? Don Greenwood classic.
I have.
Yeah. So not a hard game, but there's a lot of nuances to it. So I would say the complexity level is probably, it's not necessarily something you want to start your 12-year-old off as his first war game, but probably could play it if he's, into the hobby and, wants to, try a card game out. That's, if he's playing lock and load tactical, you can play this. So you can gauge it by that. It's no harder than lock and load tactical. I'll say that.
Okay.
I got a question for you, Sean.
Yep.
I don't know if this was asked yet. I don't remember being there. what would you say the biggest differences are between, let's say, someone who likes to play up front in this game?
Well, the breakout of the units are different. So up front uses individual troops, and these use squads and with leaders attached to them. The terrain deck is separate from the terrain that's in up front. Up front has terrain that is buried into their action deck, and you draw terrain out of there. I think the terrain system here makes it a little more manageable. So you're not getting a fistful of woods or something like that, and you can't use those on any of your troops, and you have to do various discard actions to try to get the cards you want. When you put up a infantry unit, I can explain the discard function a little better. Up front, it uses some of the same systems that Point Blank does. The turns are monitored by going through the deck. They handle some things like infiltration, and I don't have infiltration in this, but I do have some flanking. So those are some of the immediate differences. So what you're looking at here is you're looking at a squad of the SS. And all those icons around them are all the type of actions that they can perform. But the thing is, and here's the kind of it's rough to describe, but the action deck has icons on them that match a lot of these. The action deck can order an entire stack of units, and you can stack up to 3 squads in a unit. If you have some cards in your hand that you don't need or don't want to use, you could discard one of those cards and then have the squad perform an actual action on its own. And then that squad is spent. So if you put up the squad back, Dave.
Yes, hold on. Well, I put the card up for you that has all the different icons.
Do you have an action card? I can show you.
What do you mean by an action card?
They're action cards. It's a whole action deck. I think that's terrain. There's a look at some of the terrain. It's a road. They're brown. They have the icons in the upper left. They have the big dice pip symbol in the upper right.
I don't see any from Blackwell.
Again, been Blackwelled. Okay, so can you put the SS back up?
Sure, hold on.
Okay, so if you have an action, you have a handful of action cards. Those action cards have icons on them that may or may not match these symbols. If the action card supersedes any of the icons that are on any cards, so you can play from your hand an action card and command any unit, even if the action is not listed on their card. Where it's important for the difference is that you can discard a card if you don't have an action that you want to play, and then you can activate an individual squad and conduct any one of the actions that's listed on their card. So from left to right here, we got a move, a fire, we got smoke, a conceal. The grenade is an assault symbol. That's a move and fire action. They can recon, and they can melee with a +1, and they have a self-rally with a star back here. So their SS had a lot of capabilities that they could act upon independently. Other cards and other squads in this game do not have as many of these icons. And then when these squads are reduced, they have even less capability. The little white flags in the upper right-hand corner. So in the game, there's the concept of objective cards. So there's objectives like churches or crossroads or those kinds of things. And those objective cards will have a black flag or a white flag or both, or 2 white flags or 1 white flag or 2 black flags. those are the type of troops needed to control the objective. So if you come up to a crossroads and you need one white flag and one black flag, that means you need a infantry unit and an ordnance unit to control that objective. I don't know if you have an objective card, Dave, if you want to put that one up.
Hold on, I'm looking right now.
While he's doing that, the blue number down there is the morale, and the red number is their firepower, and the superscripted 2 to the right is the range in sectors. Okay, so here's a crossroads objective, and if you see you have a black flag and a white flag, that SS unit had 2 white flags, so that certainly satisfies the control criteria to control the crossroads, but it doesn't have any ordnance, so it couldn't control the crossroads. It can occupy it, but can't control it. So if it had a Panzerfaust, and the Panzerfaust has a black flag on there, coupled with the infantry unit, it would have a black and white flag, and so therefore it would control the crossroad. Does that make sense to guys?
Yeah.
So, and all objective cards have different configurations of flags. So, like we have a building called the Manor House. It has no ordnance criteria, but it has like a couple white flags. So, the SS certainly probably could control that building on their own. But we have varying different types of objectives. So, town squares, crossroads, and these things are usually set in advance. Now we also have counters that have these flags on them too. So you could declare like a woods or a clear terrain as a having a control flag on it if you want. So we give you counters to do that as well if you don't want to use the objectives in a DYO situation.
Hey, Sean, I think I uploaded one myself. There you go.
There you go. There's an action card. So this action card is an assault. So if you have a stack of units in a sector, you can play that action, the assault action, and every card in there can conduct an assault, which is a move and fire action. And the pip on the right, that's just the D6 determining, if you need to do a D6 check, you would roll and that would be your result. There's a couple little assisting things on there. So it says +1 to hit assaulting AFVs. So that means that if you're assaulting with an AFV and someone's trying to hit it, it's a little harder to hit a moving target. The AFV that is assaulting will have a +2 penalty to hit. So it's harder to move. So some nuances in the game. So some of the American tanks have a gyro capability, so that +2 is reduced to a +1. Of course, down on the bottom there, again, there's assaulting infantry's -2 to attack, so it's -2 to their firepower if they're conducting a movement and fire. But this is one of the examples of the action deck.
So, Sean, the most important question.
Yes, sir.
ETA.
Well, the game, for the most part, is absolutely done. It's been play tested by, I'm going to say probably about 20 or 30 people have played it at least, anywhere between 1 to 5 times. So it's been, there's a lot of people who have shown interest. A lot of people have got to play this game in varying forms of development. So I brought this out to Origins, I think in 2017, and we had my hand-drawn stuff and cutouts and things like that and played it. And there was from there, we've only made improvements. The Kickstarters are what I'm putting together right now, all the stretch goals. So there's a couple different stretch goals that we're putting together. We're thinking about adding some more units and that sort, and obviously more scenarios. Scenarios are not as hard to develop as the actual units. My issue with developing units is I do a lot of research and on what units was in that theater and what the likelihood of them being around. So I do a lot of research and various of the Stackpole books and some Eisenhower's books. So,
and all the scenarios are all historical?
They're all based on actual actions.
It doesn't mean we won't have any, hypothetical, but right now we have all stuff. I know some of the stretch goals, and Sean, you can correct me. I know we plan to have some British airborne, some additional terrain, German and Allied armor add-ons. I know we could plan a few support weapons, leaders. I'm looking at the Kickstarter now. German Luftwaffe. This, some other stuff there too. He's still working on the cards yet, guys.
What about the mandatory zombie?
No zombies. No, you're gonna have to.
Sean demanded werewolves.
Yeah. No, I'm not gonna actually tell you what I demanded, but anyway.
Shayne, what did you besides just keep changing the artwork on you? That's all Sean's fault.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's.
Yeah, you've got to wear that one, buddy.
I know. Shayne's been a good sport about a lot of it, but it really is not developing new artwork. It's this icon doesn't belong on here. I need to put it back or remove it or something like that. So they're minor things. They're not major design changes or anything.
Shayne, talk to us a little bit about the besides putting up with Sean and I during this process. What's the process that you take to get to the artwork the way we have it, etc.?
Well, one of the actual hardest parts is finding an appropriate historical photo that fits the card. Like the infantry units are like two different figures, so it's normally from two different photographs, and everything just has to work out right. And then the vehicles have to be in just a good pose for the card, basically, and then you crop it out and all that, and color it, and the photos have to have something to add to the card, basically.
Yeah, I got when we first started seeing some of the art. Shayne's was sort of drip feeding some of the art, and I was getting real excited. It was looking really good. So he's sort of laying out on the card, and he had carte blanche to put the icons and the all of the numbering fire factors and morale and all those wherever he wanted. In actuality, we started off with tarot size cards because somebody said that would be a lot cooler and fit on a table.
Well, I let you change it, so it's okay.
So that was one of the big design changes, and there's a little bit of a hold up. We started off with all the unit cards being tarot size, so a lot of folks got to play the game with the tarot size cards. After all the times I've been playing the game, I've noticed that it gets a little cramped. Now, here's another thing that you can do, not to drift too far, but you actually don't even really need the grid to play the game, because the game comes with area counters and sector counters. So you could play without the grid, and if you just keep track of them with the counter, so what sector they're in and what area they're in. So column and sector, column and row, actually. So that was one of the things that we wanted to do was get it down to poker size so it would fit on the table a little better. And Shayne, after cursing us out in Canadian, came through for us.
Yeah, it was a bit of work.
So, why have the map then? Is this for just for ease of play, I guess, for people who
ease of play? Because if it is, I think if you're an upfront player, the concept of relative range is probably familiar. But when you first started playing upfront, how hard was that to envision?
It was a nightmare. I started playing it when the game first came out, well, maybe a couple years afterwards, and I literally could not comprehend the entire relative range. It took about 4 years till I found someone who could teach me the game and could actually say, this is how the relative ranges are supposed to work, until it clicked.
Yeah.
Upfront could have benefited a huge amount from a grid map like you've got set up, but they went the whole abstract route, and I'm not an abstract thinker, so I had a hard time grasping it at times.
You know, it was funny. I forget who Sean taught me how to play with, but you know, I couldn't play that game either. I had all the game's add-ons. I never played it until Sean played it with me at WBZ one year.
I love that game.
I wasn't as I mean, I know the guy and I who played with it, I wasn't as impressed. Neither was he. After playing it, it just wasn't like I you know, not that it's our game. I just had a lot more fun playing the point blank. Just the biggest feature, which Sean hasn't said, but I'll say it. The biggest feature of Sean's game is what's the worst thing you have happen. I won't mention any games, but you get your cards in your hand, and none of them you can use. And so you either sit there and do nothing, or you pass, which is basically doing nothing. Okay? And that the next card you get out of the stack there is a card that you can do something with. You know, Sean, I think that's the biggest feature of the game, in my opinion, at least. What card? You know, why don't you explain that exactly what you can do with that?
So if you saw the can you put that other card back up, that action card with the 2 icons on them?
Okay, hold on. Action card with 2 icons. I'm going to assume you mean
Okay, so here's an example of a move card and a ready card. So a move card and a move action and a ready action. Some of the cards have dual actions, but there are some cards that, let's say you're in a defensive position and you have all movement cards. You don't want to move. Obviously, you're in good cover and you don't want to leave. So you may want to fire on somebody, but you don't have a fire card. So you can discard one of these cards and activate one unit on the map to conduct an action as long as the action you want to conduct is on that unit's card. So, and there are also cards with lightning bolts on here that are unit action cards. And you can play a unit action card, and it basically you can play any icon on a unit's inventory of actions. But the difference is the unit won't spend, whereas if you discard a card, the unit is spent. So
you never have a dead hand then?
Yeah. So I think maybe once I did, but that was because I had spent all my units and had nothing I could do. So that was a very rare occasion. And, you know, I'm not doing Lean Six Sigma here where, you know, I have like 3.4 defects per million opportunities here, but there's been a few, maybe 4 Sigma. Anyway, the other thing too, and I think the innovative thing that I also want to communicate out to the folks here is that the movement system is pretty innovative. And up front, when you moved, you played a movement card, and then you reduced or increased your relative range. And you left that movement card on your troops because you were moving, but you were closer. And then you had to hope for or if you planned it well, you had a terrain card in your hand, and the next turn you could play a terrain card. Now you've moved closer, let's say, and then you've laid down a terrain card. Here, you can order your troops to move, but you do not move into the new sector just yet. You just show that you're moving, which simulates they're getting out of their positions, they're prepping, getting in, they're however they're going to advance, and they're starting to move. It's not till the upkeep phase of the beginning of your next impulse when you determine what terrain you're moving into and where you decrease the sector or you move actually into the new sector. So in that case, you would draw a terrain card off the top of the deck, and whatever that terrain card is, that's the terrain you're going to move into. You can refuse it, like in I think you can refuse it up front going back. You can refuse it, but you remain moving and you're not any closer. So you can't cheese your way closer to a unit and you just wait for the terrain that you want. But once that terrain's in place, it's in place. And the only way that you can get out of moving and go back to your positions is to actually discard a card to remove the move action. So you're spending an impulse to do that. So go ahead.
Any hero cards?
There are no hero cards, but there's a hero capability. So when you're conducting a fire attack and you a hero is generated, instead of actually going and digging out a hero card, you're digging out a counter that has an extra action with a bonus on it, and that is a capability for the squad. So if, for instance, it was a fire counter, because you draw them out randomly, and it was at +1, that means that you could conduct a fire attack at +1 with just that unit. Once you spend it, though, it's done. So the hero was the hero for the moment, and then he goes back to being a regular Joe. So it's just the concept's there, but it's not cards or if it was lock and load tactical, they actually have an actual counter to represent the hero. Here it's just a capability.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot, Shayne. We have people, fans of yours, asking an unbelievable question.
Okay. I can say that it'll be Commonwealth forces. I'm thinking it's probably going to be Italian theater.
North Africa or Italy?
Italy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Because then from there you could also have like a smaller expansion for Crete with the forces. So that's what I'm thinking anyway.
And when do you think that'll be ready to go or done?
Well, what I'm working on right now for Old School Tactical is actually a pocket battles with some smaller maps with a scenario generator before I get to the Volume 4, the big game. Just thinking about doing some smaller maps, pocket battles, and stuff like that. So
in the Italian scenario, you're going to have like Monte Cassino?
I've been reading a ton about Italy over the last 6-8 months. Casino, of course, Sicily, Orgona with Canadians, and like there's so many rivers and hills and valleys in Italy. The terrain was just incredible. So there's a lot of good battles. So I'll have to see.
Right. They're asking also, Dan, what other games have you worked on? Like actually, they're asking both of you. So we'll start with you, Shayne, since you're talking. What other games have you worked on?
What other war games? Well, of course, I did the work for Armageddon War for Flying Pig. All my Old School Tactical games. I have 2 games right now with Lock and Load. Point Blank, and
You're also working on Contact Now, Steve Overton's game.
Red Eclipse, yeah.
I'm trying to get him on here soon too, so he can, kind of tell you what's going on with that.
Mm-hmm. And then I have about 4 on the go right now with Compass, and then I have
which ones on Compass are you working on?
Working on East Front Tank Leader. I just finished a magazine game for them. Actually, I have it right here on my screen. I have okay. There's a couple further down the road. They're only initial. One's like an ancient Rome game, and then there's a North Africa Tobruk game.
Nice.
And then there's another one further down. So,
all right, Sean, I got a question for you. Oops, sorry, wrong button. Here we go.
What is the importance of the grenade on the card? The grenade on the action card and the action icons on the unit cards are for an assault. So that is a move and fire action. So when you play an assault on your units, all of the units will be moving, and in addition to moving, they can conduct a fire attack. And then, as I was describing moving in earlier, once the moving and the sector change and the terrain reveal is in the upkeep phase of your next impulse.
Okay. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
On the air with Lock and Load Publishing. We'll be right back after this message.
Well, as you know, as many of you may not know, but as many of you do know, tomorrow's Veterans Day here too. And I'd like to thank Devin and Sean, and I don't know, Kurt, if you served or not, but anyone who did serve. Dan, I know you served for the other side, but we'll thank you anyway.
I think we may have shot you down, Dan.
Yeah. But really, everybody out there, you know, whether you're celebrating the Marine's birthday or you're a vet or just served, and it doesn't really matter, one Army, for the most part, we just like to thank you for your service and taking the time and giving us what we have here.
Thank you.
Amen.
Okay.
You know, when I initially started, I served under the 29th Infantry Division. So when I first started putting Point Blank together, I was going to put together actual units with unit logos and things like that. And the 29th was one of my picks for that. But one of the other series I do is Nations at War, and I didn't want to get pigeonholed into identifying units and then having to make scenarios using pieces of units that never fought in that action. It just, I have to put a big disclaimer in the scenario. We were talking about some of the games that is that still on the table? You still want to know what other games we were working on?
I just I'm trying to use the timing here properly. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. So I've developed the second edition for Nations at War and designed Stalin's Triumph, which is a platoon level game available at Lock and Load. I did a couple of the tank on tank expansions, and I did the Lock and Load Tactical Solo system. So derived that out of from Academy Games' system and created it for Lock and Load Tactical to work with all 400 plus scenarios that are available with Lock and Load Tactical Solo.
Hey, Shayne, we had one person ask, Tony Costa wanted to know, what is your training in art? Are you just naturally really good at art, or did you go to college? How did you train? Because I'm sure most of that was done in Photoshop. So
yeah, no, I didn't go to college for art. I actually went for chemistry, but my artwork, it's always been kind of, since I was a little kid, I've always been artistic. And then as I've gotten into this field, I've just up my tools they're just tools, Photoshop, Illustrator, and all that. So I self-taught with that. Yeah,
he's Canadian, man. He's gifted.
Yeah.
I have a hard time drawing stick figures, so
I always liked art. So
yeah. Hey, Dave, why don't you show one of the armor cards?
We have armor in this game?
Yes, we do.
I thought these were just really fat.
Yeah, so here we have M4. So there's a lot of stuff going on this card, but again, you see the icons of the actions that the tank can do on its own. If it was, you did that discard action, obviously it can do any action that is ordered from the action deck. One of the icons on here is a Willie Pete icon, so there's some rounds that it can fire there. The red triangle and is a bow-mounted machine gun. The superscripted number to the right of it is its range. That's in sectors. The round circular number is another machine gun that's a coax capability. The blue number is its morale. The black number is its HE capability. So if it fires an ordnance round at soft targets, that number right there is what you use to resolve the combat. Down below, you have its armor and its flank. So it has a 5 in the front and a 2 in the flank. The ribbon down there in the very bottom, it's color-coded to determine range. So a red numbers are short range, the yellow are medium, and the white are long. So if you are firing at a unit that's within 1 to 2 sectors away, you would need to roll a 2d6 and roll an 8 or less, and that would secure a hit. You got to factor in some modifiers. And then that number to the right is the penetration number. So you would then draw another D6 check, add that penetration number to it, and that would be your total penetration number. And your target would go look at its armor. And if it was, say, you were firing at another, say, a captured M4, and you rolled a 6, you would add the 4 to it to make it a 10. And then your opponent would then add 5 to a D6 check. And then if the penetration number exceeded the defense number, you would you would cook the tank.
Well, also, I think it's important. You don't have to use the dice in the cards. Sean and I wanted to make it an option between rolling dice, if you wanted to roll dice like a regular game, or you can use the cards. Is that correct?
Yes. You can use dice. The only stipulation is that the action deck is the timer for the game. So for each die you roll, you would need to flip that many action cards onto the deck, onto the discard pile.
The purpose of the action deck rolling through is it simulates the turns, right? Or the impulses, or what?
What was that?
When you go through the deck of cards, what is that simulating?
Oh, so it's just it measures time. So if you empty the first deck, then say it's a 3-turn game, so then you would go through the action deck 2 more times, and at the end of the third deck, that's when the game would end.
Sean, this game, I'm sure it's a hell of a lot of work, but I think once all the mechanics, you're satisfied and it's going out to the people, the possibilities of creating Vietnam scenarios, modern scenarios, I mean, it's almost endless.
Yeah, because it's based on the lock and load tactical system, the combat system. So there's a lot of research that's available, so it makes part of that easier. There are some vehicles and units that are not part of that. So where'd the tiger go? Davey took the tiger down.
I'm sorry, hold on.
So yeah, it is possible to introduce modern on here.
Yeah, well, I'm just waiting for the Kursk expansion.
Well, here you're looking at a tiger. You have it has 2 control flags, so it's sort of a psychological factor along with just its capability, because actually the Panther has a better penetration value with its gun. You got lots of armor in the front of it. You've got some pretty powerful weaponry on the actual card. You do have some national characteristics and some vehicle characteristics. So if you look at the print on there, you see it's a large target, so it's easier to hit at longer range. And then you have a long range capability too, so it makes it actually easier at long range to hit something. So and all those are covered in the rules. The circle T stands for it's turreted, and the cylinder with the rounded ends means it's tracked. So there's bog checking in this game. So when you go into degrading terrain with a vehicle, there's a chance that your vehicle could bog. A greater chance if you go into blocking terrain.
On the low end and on the high end for the scenarios, how many units are you looking at each side controlling? How many squads, weapon teams, tanks do you see on average each player controlling?
On average, on a scenario, you could have anywhere from 4 to 8 squads, 1 or 2 vehicles, various support weapons. I don't know if you have any support weapons data that you can put up. So they're not. You're not playing with, dozens of unit cards on here. It would be very, very busy, and it probably in most combat actions that I've read, it's not that concentrated unless they were mustering and you caught them off guard. But there's support weapons in the game as well, and they're attached. We have things like radios, light machine guns, flamethrowers. Dave, I don't know if you have any of those cards you want to put up. Okay, so here's a radio. So you could, if you have an action card that has a fire attack, and you want to order a unit that has a radio, the interesting thing here is the 2 different values. So if you draw a 4+ for your to hit, you would attack with a 4 level, a 4 fire factors. If it's a 5+, means that you got a hold of a little more artillery, so you would add an extra one. The Americans have slightly better artillery than the Germans did, but that's what the radios would do. I don't know if you have any other ones, Dave. Satchel charge. So unit carrying a satchel charge, you'd use this in a melee. It's a one-use item, obviously. Most people are familiar with these things. It's got a big fire factor that would contribute to the melee. And it's got a little blaze symbol on there. So there's a chance that it sets the terrain on fire that it's in. If there's a blaze and you're in a terrain with blaze, then you have to make a morale check to be able to stay in that terrain, or else you have to bug out. These are the nuances I'm talking about in the game that we try to model as much as possible. So it's not as abstract, and that's why I call this more of a tactical game than some of the other card games that are out.
We've got a couple more questions from YouTube and Facebook. For some reason, they're not feeding through to us. Mark Faircloth, our buddy Mark Faircloth, who did the wonderful World War 85 3D printed map at Contact Atlanta last week, he was wondering, any new Nations of War content on the radar? And I believe you have got Tigers in the Snow and a Stalingrad for Nations at War you're supposed to be working on.
Yes, I am. Tigers.
We were talking about that today, weren't we?
Yes, we have. Tigers in the Snow is a little more close to done than the Stalingrad one. The Stalingrad one, I'm toying around with more of an actual historical flavor to that, instead of geomorphical maps that are butted up and that are parts of buildings found around Stalingrad. The maps are the hardest thing. So one of the differences between the older versions of Nations at War and the newer versions is I'm going more for historical actions, and I like that, and I think the players like that too, so that they can learn a little bit about some of the actions that occurred and some of the forces that were in there, and then kind of what happened, and at least get the terrain kind of close to what they were fighting in. So Tigers in the Snow, the force lists are done, the scenarios ideas are done. It's just the map board is what's been kind of holding me up on that. Stalingrad, that one is going to be a little harder. I think the joy of Nations of War is the armor, primarily. Running around and blowing up platoons of tanks and stuff. That's to me, that's probably what most of the folks that buy that game are drawn to, not necessarily pushing infantry around with but that I'm not speaking for everybody, but in Stalingrad, that was a lot of, probably a good bit of infantry combat in that, and of course they were cranking out tanks and sending them out the back door as they were done. But much more famous armor battles in games like battles of the Bulge, and that's why I picked Kursk. The area Kursk for Stalin's Triumph. So if you guys don't have that and you're a fan of tank battles, Kursk was Dan, your favorite. Kursk was the Stalin's Triumph was modeled after the Battle of Kursk.
We also had one last question that's popped up. Viper Dave, he said, I might have missed it, but when is this to be released?
Dave, you're late, man. It's been in the stores for weeks now.
Yeah. No, I'll let Dave answer that first, and
go ahead, Dave.
If I can get Sean to go faster tomorrow, okay. Honestly, the Kickstarter, we're ready with the Kickstarter, but our basically in-house rule is we try to have all the artwork and everything done before we start the Kickstarter. Okay, so we just gave Shayne, I know, not too long ago, the Kickstarter stretch goal graphics and stuff like that, and Shayne's working on that. He's actually going to give us the map we showed you earlier. We're going to have him design more of a freehand map so it matches the rest of the artwork. If you look at the map closely, it's really more of lock and load tactical, and not that that's bad map artwork, obviously, but I wanted to just match all of Shayne's already previous work that he's put into the game and effort. So to answer your question, I don't know. I'm gonna say it's gonna be one of the next 1 or 2 games up there. I think the next Kickstarter will either be, believe it or not, Lock and Load Tactical Digital, or it will be Trial of Strength, the second edition, because that's basically all the we made a whole bunch of new scenarios for it, expanded the game quite a bit as far as scenarios go. And that's what I think will be next. People are asking, who's Kurt? So, Kurt, why don't you tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel, what you're doing? I know you're a big-time gamer. A lot of you may not remember Kurt, or know you've seen him, but not know where. Kurt did a lot of the ASL videos. He did a lot of the, what is the computer game that you did a lot of videos on?
Tigers on the Hunt.
Tigers in the Hunt, and we're grateful to have Kurt on board, and we hope we'll be doing more stuff with him. But tell us a little bit about your channel, what you do.
I do a lot of tactical wargaming. I started my channel doing ASL videos because when I was getting into ASL, there just wasn't a lot of videos on YouTube. Couldn't learn anything, and wow, now I'm really big. So that's like spotlight right on me now.
Don't flub it now.
So I started doing ASL videos, which were well received. So then I just started doing tutorial videos, gameplay videos, and different tactical war game systems out there. Worked with a developer for Tigers on the Hunt, and did a lot of videos on that, being very familiar with the ASL system. Do a lot of tactical wargaming. I do book reviews, fantasy book reviews, war game book reviews, sports games. I kind of dabble in a lot of different things. So, but mostly I enjoy tactical wargaming. World War II is my favorite. That's my number one passion, my number one goal, and I really enjoy doing that. So I'm hoping to bring Lock and Load Tactical beta to my channel, kind of introduce it to people and show them what it's like. And being a big tactical Lock and Load guy, I'm hoping to spread the word out there, get some people interested in the computer version of the board game. So looking forward to that as well.
Have you tried it already, the computer game at all?
Oh yeah, I played it several times already.
What's your initial impressions, I guess?
My initial impressions is it's very well done. There's a couple things that I'd like to see the dice rolls last a little bit longer in the game. Just
there's a setting that
I know
you
there
can
was
do.
a setting, it could be a little longer than that. And I don't know, for some reason, I'm just seeing myself still. Am I?
Yeah. No, I focused on you because you were talking. That's all.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know if I hit something by accident. Yeah, I knew there was a setting to adjust that because I watched Devin's intro on the tactical, but I still think, for some players that are trying to learn the system and stuff, it might be, adjust a little bit longer. But besides that, I think it's I play all kinds of different tactical computer board games and everything, so I'm very familiar. So things that stand out to me because I play them all, so I have a lot of experience, I guess, with the different systems, and so just the things that stand out. I would like to see 3D dice. I know that was an issue, or that not really is going to be added, but it was cool having the 3D dice. But I kind of like the way it's going to take some getting used to, having the smaller dice that pop up pretty, for your results is pretty cool. I think it's really, really well done. Really well done so far.
No, maybe we can get you and Devin to play a game online against each other as one of the podcasts.
We can do that. That would be great.
Well, we'll have it for bragging rights,
We just need to get Tom to program on the player versus player part now. Not that he doesn't have 1,000 other things.
Now.
Yeah,
he's working on the multiplayer.
Not that he doesn't have 1,000 other things that he's working on. So,
all right. Dev, I know you're looking at the questions. Have you seen any more that come up?
Nope. They're starting to pop up.
So, for people that don't understand the concept of the game, are all the units going to be on the board, or they're going to be bringing in reinforcements, constantly bringing in reinforcements, or is what you have on laid out, is that all the units you have?
So on a scenario, you're talking about like in a typical scenario?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so most of the scenarios, the units that are on the board are static. So those are what you have. However, there is a action card. It's a reinforcements card. So each scenario will have its own reinforcements that may show up if you play the reinforcements. Well, they'll show up if you play the reinforcements card, and they'll come in, and then you'll determine what reinforcements you get and where they show up. Unless it's planned, like there may be in a scenario like on turn 2, a Sherman shows up in one of the areas at Sector 4 or something like that.
Okay.
So there will be some pre-planned pieces like that. But there is a reinforcements card, and the reinforcements card can be played and bring in extra units. You just don't know what.
So that'll be in the action deck.
Yes, the action deck.
So either player could end up getting that reinforcement then.
Either player can have it. Yep.
And will it be split, like player A you get this, player B you get this, or is it just?
So if I'm the German player and I play that reinforcement card as my action, I can then go into my reinforcements chart in the scenario and determine what reinforcement I'm going to get and what's going to come in. And then I can order it the following turns.
Right. Got it. Okay.
There's also so the concept of smoke in the game is really fun and probably very reminiscent of Upfront. So you can play smoke, or if you have a mortar team, you can fire smoke into a sector, even if there's no terrain in there, and it blocks line of sight. Line of sight is a sort of a new concept in this game as well. So that was a pretty tough one to overcome. But there's wind icons in the action deck. So if you were flipping a card and you got a wind icon, it would blow the smoke off. Sort of reminiscent to Upfront, where you had wind in one of the cards that you would play or resolve, and it would remove the smoke. Also, smoke is gone at the end of a turn, so all the smoke goes away at the end of a turn, unless the scenario dictates otherwise. There's buttoning and unbuttoning. There's some tanks. Shayne doesn't know this yet, but there's some tanks that have a varying number of asterisks by it. So if it has one asterisk, it can pop smoke into an adjacent range. If it has 2, it can only pop smoke into its own sector. And if it's 3, they have to be crew exposed in order to do that. So like some of the M10s had, they had their smoke little mortars, they had to be crew exposed in order to fire them off, that kind of stuff. So there's some nuances in there like that. There's a lot of detail, but not as much as, say, something like Squad Leader, for instance. You have any support weapon cards, Dave?
Just those that you showed.
Just the radio? Okay, that's fine.
There's a comment there, Dave. You know where Tony Costa lives?
Yeah, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, well, he says he likes Kirk's YouTube channel much better than mine. So I'm going to get the snot out of him. I swear to God.
I see another arm wrestling match coming up.
Hey, I ain't going to lose this one.
Yeah, you probably have to use goose grease on your arms so you can slide out. Unbelievable. For those who don't know, WBC this year, Grant from the Players Aid and Dan had an epic arm wrestle, and I'm sure you can find it online. It was something to watch. This year coming, supposedly Darren from Lock and Load and Grant from the Players Aid are going to have an arm wrestling. Not the same thing about Dan's arm wrestling capabilities, but I think it'll be a little bit more balanced.
It was all about the purse. It was all about the purse.
Okay, does anyone else have any other questions or anything?
I'm good.
I do not.
All right. Then, guys, you know what to do now. Start your waving.
Well, that is all you have for this episode. Keep gaming, and may God bless you and keep you until next time. On the air is a Lock and Load Publishing production.